I'm Louise Ross and the author of Women Who Walk, How 20 Women from 16 Countries Came to Live in Portugal, and The Winding Road to Portugal, 20 men from 11 countries share their stories. And these two books are a collection of mini memoirs, the stories of 20 men and 20 women who move country to country, sometimes independently, sometimes with partner and or family, en route to a life in Portugal, though for some it wasn't their final destination. And today I've invited Alex Zogbi, one of the interviewees from The Winding Road to Portugal, to read a couple of pages from his story, and then we're going to talk. But first, by way of introducing Alex, I'll read an excerpt from the introductory paragraph to his story. Alex and his wife, Andrea, live close by to me on the coast outside of Lisbon. We often share happy hour, either at their apartment or mine. Those hours are always happy because Alex has a wicked tongue-in-cheek sense of humour. I've also been fortunate enough to sample his delicious Lebanese cooking, secret family recipes that Alex lovingly prepares. In fact, I was so impressed by his homemade yogurt, something his grandmother taught him to make. I asked could he teach me how to make it, which he agreed to do, instructing me on the time-honoured steps to making rich and creamy Lebanese yogurt. And so thank you, Alex. Thanks for participating in this live interview to discuss and talk a little about your story. And now I'm going to hand it over to you to read that excerpt.
Okay, well, to begin with, it is a pleasure to be with you and also an honor to be part of your book, one of your many books. And well, I'm glad also that you liked my cuisine that much, or at least that you are very polite to to pretend you did.
Oh, I really do. You're an amazing cook.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, so I'll read a few paragraphs of my story.
Thank you.
As written by Louise. And so here it goes.
Okay.
Well, I'm quite a genetic mix, which is not uncommon for a third-generation Brazilian. 50% Lebanese, 25% Italian, with a dash of Viking, and an even smaller dash of Amazonian Indian. The later dashes I discovered after taking a DNA test. Oscar Rates de Almeida, my maternal grandfather, was the son of Portuguese from the Minho area in Portugal northwest. 10th century Viking raids offer a possible explanation for his blue eyes. His ancestors were early to Brazil at a time when it was a big orgy of intermingling between the Europeans, the Africans, and the local tribes. Hence my dash of Amazonian Indian. My maternal grandmother was of Italian heritage, from the Veneto region of northeast Italy. She married Oscar after meeting him in Brazil. My father's parents were born in Lebanon. They came to Brazil in the early 1900s, escaping the Muslim persecution of Christians. My father was born in São Paulo, which is where I, too, was born in the early 60s. I had more contact with the Lebanese side of the family, especially my grandmother, who lived close by. I didn't meet any of my grandfathers. They had died before I was born. The family was close-knit and valued cultural traditions, which were perpetuated at weekly lunches and dinners when everyone from the extended family got together. My Lebanese grandmother would not have considered the kitchen a place for a man. Kitchens are for women. But when she passed away, 5 of her 6 daughters were unmarried and still living in the same house they'd shared with my grandmother. They split the house chores between them, with 2 of my aunts doing most of the cooking. One of those aunts was my madrinha, or godmother, and she was very fond of me. Whenever I visited, I was often in the kitchen helping her. No one taught me how to cook, because this is not an activity for men. But I always enjoyed Lebanese cuisine, and despite the fact that São Paulo is full of Lebanese restaurants, there are some dishes that are well-kept family secrets. As members of my family aged and started to die, I was concerned some recipes would go with them, and so I asked the remaining family to show me how to make these traditional dishes. My intention was to preserve our family's Lebanese cuisine. My father's parents spoke Arabic, but only between themselves. They never taught the children to speak their language, and they never returned to Lebanon. In those days, you left your country of origin as an immigrant, and you didn't go back. Likewise, my parents never considered going to Lebanon. It was just too remote. My parents were not super well off, but we lived comfortably. My father, who was born in 1926, considered France a pinnacle of civilization, cultured and refined. After World War I, Lebanon became a protectorate of France, and even today, French, alongside Arabic, is still an official language of Lebanon. Wanting to give his children the best possible education, my father chose the Lycée Pasteur of São Paulo, a French school, for my sister and me to attend. This gave us a different, more European perspective, and it's where we first became fluent in French. We had friends who were children of French expats. Their companies offered the families annual trips back to France. To us, this was amazing, spending holidays in France. It was simply not part of our reality. If we went to Argentina, this was already something, but to go to France. Well, so this was just a teaser. So I hope that it will motivate people to go and buy the book and do the rest.
Read your story. Well, thank you, Alex. One of the things that's so rich about these paragraphs that actually I picked for you to read is how multicultural, how ethnically diverse your heritage is and your life growing up in Brazil was. But in fact, that's the nature of Brazilians, isn't it? It's a country like Australia, where I'm from, that is just, it's made up of immigrants. Is that true?
Yes, yeah, that's true. It's all these new world countries, even the States in some ways. It's a big melting pot because, I mean, the natives were basically destroyed or annihilated or very, very much reduced in numbers. Mm-hmm. And the settlers came in and occupied the whole thing. So yeah, we're all
mixes
descendants of settlers.
That's right.
Who came in a pretty recent time. In my case, they came in the early 20th century. So I'm a pretty recent arrival. To Brazil.
And yet, with all that ethnic diversity in your background, it feels, or your story reads as though you very much identify with the Lebanese side of your family.
Yes, I do. But this, well, I think that for once, well, although I am from Lebanese and Italian extraction, the Italian family was very, very small. My Italian grandparents, they just had my mother, as she was an only child. So I didn't have cousins and other children to play with. So it was very, very limited by the number of people. Although the Italians are also renowned to be very close-knit, et cetera, but because they were so few, it just didn't happen in my case. On the other hand, the Lebanese family was enormous. So, and they are also very tightly knit. It's a cultural trait of these.
Very, very like the Portuguese, actually. That the
family. Yeah, very like the Portuguese.
And the Italians,
very much so.
Yes.
Yeah, so I had dozens of cousins and aunts and blah, blah, blah. So we were, I had this very big chunk of family on the other side. So that's why the Lebanese, I think, rose to the surface much more than the Italian.
Yeah. And there's a grandparent who came from the north of Portugal and found his way to Brazil. Do you think that you felt any connection with Portugal because a tiny little bit of your heritage was from Portugal?
Well, not really. My guess is that just like for a long time, the Americans, they really had a very bad image of the English because they used to be colonized by them. A bit of the same thing happens also. I mean, it's hard for a Brazilian to be proud of being of Portuguese stock. It is something that's, I have also Portuguese in my Portuguese blood in my veins or something, but it's not something that you really, it's not chic in Brazil. It's very easy. But so it was really a coincidence for me to end up living here in Portugal as I do and as I love. But this was mostly due to professional reasons.
That's right.
Because
That's right. You ultimately studied engineering and worked as an engineer with a big multinational, and that's how you found your way here. And yet you also, you hated, you hated working. You hated working for the big multinational.
Yes, my theory is that as the saying goes, the best things in life are free. And if you're paid to work, it's because it's not one of the good things in life. So if you have to get paid to do it, it's not because it's pleasant. But, well, you have to do it. And so I did it until it was necessary. But as soon as I could get rid of that part of that, at least for me, that uncomfortable part of life, I got rid of it. And I really think I did it on the best possible country to be kind of retired because of the weather and the kindness of people. And I mean, it's a great life, the one we can live in Portugal.
It is. And, you know, I think I'm going to go ahead and finish up there. And thank you so much for participating in this little brief excerpt of your story about the way you found your way to living a life in Portugal. Thanks so much, Alex. And for those who are interested.
Yeah, I would like to thank you for the invitation and also for the privilege of being part of your book.
Oh, thank
you. And it's been a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, thank you. And for those who are interested, Alex's story, of course, is in The Winding Road to Portugal. He is one of 20 men from 11 countries who shared their story to make up this fascinating anthology. Thanks again, Alex. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.